is back into it in Chester. Here's El Senior. Yes! Yes!
The center back, Jacob Glesnes, is going for it.
Oh my God! What a goal! And that will do it! One of the best comebacks in recent years. 3 unanswered by the Union. And they go into the Gold Cup break. Winning it 3.
Hello, welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd. Well, after the Union's 3-0 victory over Inter Miami, we have to put that one in the rear view mirror and move on to the Union's biggest game of the season, which is against Toronto FC this Saturday at 7:30 p.m. So, unfortunately, I wasn't able to secure anyone that covers Toronto to preview this game with, so you guys are stuck with me to talk about Toronto for about 25 to 30 minutes, and I just want to give you guys a quick update, though. So, you guys won't get a review episode for this game against Toronto. You guys won't get a review episode for Wednesday's Cincinnati game, nor will you get a preview for the Montreal Impact game. But I will be giving you guys a preview for the Cincinnati game with someone who I respect so much in the Union community. I won't tell you guys who it is, but he's been crushing Union content for the last several years. So make sure you tune in for that episode on Monday morning. But let's get straight into it, guys. I did my best to watch highlights the last time we played Toronto away, which we all should know that we won that game 2-1. I watched the Toronto versus Columbus game and everything, which Toronto came away and won that game 3-1 and everything. So hopefully, I did enough watching of those two games and everything, enough good note taking and everything. So hopefully I got this whole Toronto FC team figured out and whatnot. So anyway, like I said, let's just get straight into a look at the Toronto team that the Union will be facing this Saturday. So Toronto, they sit in third place, tied with the Union on points with 28, and they have the exact same record, 8 wins, 4 losses, and 2 draws. And really, guys, only 2 differences I can find between these two teams. One, the Union leading goal differential, while the Union are plus 13, Toronto are plus 9. And the second difference between these two teams are Toronto, they've had the pleasure of playing Montreal and Vancouver 3 times each after MLS is back, and Toronto were able to stack 4 wins in those 2 matches. Now, we know when the Union came back from MLS is back, they lost to Columbus, but that's the only team they've lost to so far since MLS is back tournament. Now, maybe, if the Union, if they were a Canadian team, maybe they would have been able to stack some wins against Vancouver and Montreal just like Toronto did. Just saying. But Toronto's most recent game against Columbus, in which Toronto won that game by a score of 3-1, like I said a couple minutes ago. So, as we know, we're in Phase 3 right now in MLS. Montreal is sharing a stadium with New York Red Bulls. Vancouver is sharing a stadium with Portland, I believe it is. And Toronto, well, out of the 3 Canadian teams, they get their own stadium, which their temporary home will be at University of Connecticut. Now, how exactly were Toronto able to beat Columbus? So this 3-1 scoreline against Columbus, I was just so surprised because up until this game, Columbus had only allowed 5 goals all season, and they've never given up 3 goals at all in one game. 2 out of Toronto's 3 goals scored saw Columbus give way too much space to Jersey Altidore and Pasuelo. And it's just, really surprising because, we saw against Columbus when Zelarayan scored against us, when you give players that can shoot from distance that much time and space, they're going to make you pay. And that's what happened to Columbus 2 times in this match against Toronto, which is just, like I said, just so uncharacteristic for Toronto to give up 3 goals in one game when they've been statistically the best defense in all of MLS so far this season. Another thing that happened in this game that helped Toronto, in my opinion, is they were really, really good in the midfield at stealing the ball off of Columbus. You had Piatti, Pasuelo, and Delgado. Each of those guys, they had 3 tackles apiece. And when 3 of your midfielders are winning back the ball that much, it's going to be a tough night for any team. And it eventually got Zelarayan so frustrated that he was getting the ball stolen off of him that it led to him just getting a yellow card. And we saw a lot of good individual skill between the likes of Pasuelo, and Toronto's right back, Larea, who made the left side of Columbus's team look just really, really silly on multiple occasions. So Kai Wagner and Jameer Montero will definitely have their hands full all night long on that left side of the field for the Union. So let's go ahead and talk about Toronto's quote-unquote home. Like I said earlier, Toronto's temporary home is at UConn. I guess technically this is a neutral game between these two teams, the Union and Toronto, but I've got to disagree because Toronto are already settled at UConn, where you look at the Union, they're flying in the day of the game, which is great because how many times have you guys, us as fans, complain, yeah, the Union need to have more chartered flights? Well, they got them this season, so I'm happy that they're flying chartered, and they're flying the day of the game and everything, but it's not neutral at all. I don't understand how people can believe that this is a neutral site. I guess it goes back to Jim saying how unfair the schedule is that we'll wind up playing more away games than home games. Well, you look at some teams in MLS, they're going to be playing more home games than away games. But some people are like, look at the teams you guys play. Those games aren't at their actual homes. But again, like I just said, Toronto's already settled in at UConn. They're not having to fly the same day. They can go about their quote-unquote normal day. Yes, they're away from their families and away from their actual home, but again, they're not traveling. The Union are. So I just don't get how I can see fans on social media say, yeah, this is just a neutral game between these two teams and everything. It's not at all. I get it from the Toronto's perspective that, yeah, they're not at home and everything where they're used to playing and everything, training and going about their normal routine. But what about 2020 is normal? So at least Toronto has it in their favor that they're not flying in the day of the game and everything where the Union are. And granted, it's not a long flight and everything for the Union, so they're not going to get too cramped up on the plane. But still, they're flying. Toronto's not. So I disagree with people on social media that are saying that, yep, this is a neutral game between these two teams. It is not. Now, I want to go ahead and talk about head coach Greg Vanney for Toronto FC, where Coach Greg has been the head coach of Toronto since 2014, and he's been really successful in his time with the club. He won MLS Cup in 2017, which resulted in him winning Coach of the Year in 2017. He's won the Eastern Conference 3 times and holds a record of 104 wins, 53 draws, and 79 losses. Most times, Vanney will run a one-striker set, usually with Altidore up top and Pozuelo right behind him. Toronto, they're not going to sit deep, really. They're going to come back and attack the Union, which we've all said we hate teams that sit deep, Cincinnati. So we're going to respect Toronto when they come out and attack the Union. I think, for fans, if this is your first game ever watching the Union, I think this is going to be a good game between these two teams. Both of these teams are really, really good in the attack. Both of these teams aren't going to play cowardly and just sit deep and everything because they know that they both have good attacks. No, they're both going to come out and try to win that midfield battle. They're going to try to break down the opposition's defense and everything. And yeah, I think this is going to be a really, really good game between the two. Toronto, they love attacking with the fullbacks, just like the Union. And they're super good at winning the ball back in the midfield. I definitely watch out for them on set pieces because we'll remember last year in Toronto, Pozuelo, he made us pay. It was a beautiful free kick against Cornell. I think he got a hand to it and everything, but wasn't enough to save the goal. And luckily, right after that, Jameer Montero, I believe, scored when Toronto had a man off injured and everything, but it didn't matter. Toronto should have done a better job defending that play and everything. We remember Kasper Schmeichel running to the left and everything, and 2 defenders follow Kasper, and Jameer Montero runs off of a defender completely unmarked and slots the ball home past the goalie's left. So yeah, it was a good game last year in Toronto. But I'd say that Toronto are dangerous on the counterattack, but I would say that they don't have the pace that the Union have. So if they do try and hit the Union on the counter, which I do believe we'll probably see a couple times in this game, I think the Union can recover quickly with the pace they have back on defense, and especially with Jose Martinez. The dude, how many times do I talk about it? Every single week I talk about the engine on that guy, and I don't see why, if Toronto tries to hit us on the counterattack, I don't see why he would slow up this game. dude is such a workhorse in the midfield for us. So I want to go ahead and give predictions and everything, and I know I'm going a lot faster, honestly, than I thought I would, but, at the end of the day, Toronto's not my team, and I guess I don't have too much to say about Toronto, which is fine, Nobody likes somebody coming on BSing their way through an episode. I'm just going to call it as I see it. So last year marked the first time in 5 seasons that the Union had beaten Toronto away. Goals scored by the Union on that day, like I said, Jamir Montero with the game-winning goal and an own goal, which, I think probably Fafa should get credit for that goal, but they ruled it as an own goal, which is fine. I believe a Toronto defender did get a foot on it, so it is what it is. And like I said, Pozuelo scored a free kick against us for Toronto, but didn't matter because we won that game 2-1. Casper, like I said a few minutes ago, was making runs all day long, drawing the attention of 2 defenders pretty much every single time. Jamir was constantly able to make runs off the back shoulders of Toronto players. Casper was making runs. Fafa Pica was running free on the top of the box and everything. It was a good day for the Union in Toronto. It was something that we weren't used to seeing because Toronto have had our number for years to come, it seems like, up in Toronto and everything. And I'll give stats on that in a little bit. But, ultimately making those runs off of the center back shoulders and everything is what led to a goal for Columbus against Toronto. But it didn't matter at the end of the day because, like I said, Toronto came out here and just played a much better game than Columbus did and scored 3 goals. The Union overall, though, are 7 wins, 10 losses, and 6 draws versus Toronto with 29 goals scored and 34 goals against. The Union have only 3 wins against coach Greg Vanney of Toronto FC, so it's obvious that Greg knows how to prepare for the Union. Since 2014, the Union have given up 3 goals in a game 3 times against Toronto, while they've given up 2 goals a game 2 times. So looking at the stats, there's just no denying that the Union give up too many goals on the road against Toronto, but this is a different Union team, as we know from the ones in the past, so I wouldn't read too much into the stats. So my 3 keys to victory for the Union, if they are to get all 3 points against Toronto, are point number 1, just continue to make those runs off the shoulders of the Toronto center backs. Look, it worked last year against Toronto. Toronto have been conceding goals that way this year as well, so I think we will see a lot of balls played over the top to Sergio and Casper, and hopefully they're able to get in from behind and everything. Whether or not, they're able to score, we'll see. But I think this needs to be the game plan for the Union. Just make those runs, time your runs perfectly against those center backs for Toronto. Point number 2, don't give up fouls in dangerous areas. We've seen the Union concede a couple times this season off of set pieces, and set pieces are, I would definitely say, one of Toronto's strengths. So look at Pozuelo anytime that they get the ball close to net and everything. If it's a foul, look for him to shoot and everything, because he beat us in the past. He's beat teams already this season from set pieces, so the Union cannot concede in dangerous areas. And point number 3, they've got to win the midfield battle. I think whichever team wins this game, it's going to be because that team's midfield controlled the game. Both teams are good at forcing turnovers in the middle of the field. I think Brendan and Jamiro are going to both get man-marked a ton on the night, so it's important that they just look for a ton of 1-2s, look for people that are making runs in the open space. They can't be delaying time on the ball and everything, waiting for their teammates to make runs and everything. Everybody has to be on point because, like I said earlier, Toronto really caused problems for the Columbus midfield, and I think that's ultimately what won Toronto the game against Columbus. Is just they dominated the midfield battle against Columbus and made Zelarayan unhappy on the night, and I think that's what's going to be one of the keys for Toronto, is for them to win the midfield battle. So we'll see exactly how the midfield battle goes and everything. We know a lot of times that the Union's diamond causes havoc for most oppositions. But like I said, the stats show that Toronto has had our number. But again, don't read too much into stats. So my predicted lineup for this game is, as always, Andre Blake in the net for the Union. I think as a left back this game, I think we'll see Kai Wagner again. The 2 center back pairings, I know Jack Elliott, Jim Curtin said in his press conference that he was a full participant, and Warren Krival and Ray Gaddis are both getting closer on the injury front. But, even though Jack's participating fully in training. Why would you disrupt the center back pairing, Mark McKenzie and Glesnes? I don't believe you will. I know Jim's been liking to rotate the center backs and everything, but Jack's coming off of an injury, and these guys have been playing really, really well, and this is a game you need to win, especially on the road. So McKenzie and Glesnes, the two center backs. On the right, I think it's going to be Mbaizo just because Gaddis isn't close to being ready. And so in the midfield, it never changes. I don't see why it will change this game. Martinez as the 6, Bedoya and Montero as the 8s, and Aronson as the 10. Jim Curtin also did mention in his press conference that he loved Brendan Aronson as an 8, but this game he'll go back to the 10 because they're going to be putting Ali Bedoya right back in his normal position at the number 8, give him the captaincy right back. And the two strikers, I think it's going to be Sergio Santos and Kasper Schmeichel. And look, I'm actually hopeful this game that Jamiro can get a yellow card because he's on 4, I believe, for the season. And so if he gets a 5th, that means that he misses the game against Cincinnati, which if you're going to miss a game, I think Jim said in an earlier press conference, let it be the game against Cincinnati. And so if Jamiro can get a yellow card, please let it be this game so you can miss Cincinnati, be fully rested, because we know Jim doesn't really like to substitute his midfield. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Jamiro pick up a silly yellow card just so he can miss that game against Cincinnati so we don't have to worry about it going forward. So I think the Union will score 2 goals this game. And I know Toronto will score 1. And I really want to say it's going to be a 2-1 Union victory, but I honestly feel like we're going to concede a stupid foul. And I feel like it's going to be one of those 50-50 calls where it could have went against us or it could have went for us. And Jim Curtin did give the referees an earful last game. And you know how those guys like to stick together. And so even though Jim came out in his press conference and apologized, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if the refs stick it to us because Jim let the referee have it last game. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Toronto scores from a free kick late on because of a stupid challenge. So with that said, I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw. I want to say a victory for the Union. I'm not going to be convinced otherwise that the Union are going to score less than 2 goals this game. I think it's pretty obvious just how the offense has been playing. Toronto, like I said, they don't sit deep, so I don't see how the Union don't score 2 goals this game. But at the same time, I don't think the Union are going to keep a clean sheet. As much as I would like them to, as much as you guys would like them to, I just don't think it's going to happen. Toronto have just way too many good players that could beat you in the attack. So I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw, and hopefully Columbus, if that is the case, hopefully they lose or they draw as well and everything. Hopefully Orlando can lose so the table doesn't change that much. But look, guys, this is our toughest game of the whole season, and I know a lot of people are looking at that Columbus game like, oh, I can't wait to play Columbus, but we got to take it one game at a time, and I believe that's the mindset for the players, and that's what we should care about the most. As much as us fans are circling these games like, oh, we can't wait for this game, this is the game that matters the most. Nah, hopefully the players have the mindset that, yep, we're taking it one game at a time, which I believe Jim has those guys thinking one game at a time. But anyway, if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, follow at Free Kick Pod. Check out the website, thefreekickpodcast.com. Like I said, I will give you guys one more episode on Monday morning to preview the Cincinnati game. Tune in for that, guys. Hopefully the Union get a victory against Toronto. Hopefully it's a good game. Nobody gets injured. Because when I preview that Cincinnati game, I'll have no clue what happened in the Toronto game. So, nonetheless, with that said, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.